In this episode, I speak with acclaimed Australian soprano singer, entrepreneur, and founder of Mind Medicine Australia, Tania de Jong. We'll be talking about the power of using your voice, speaking and expressing yourself, but also using your voice to sing and singing with others, and the way that this can actually benefit your mental health, your anxiety, and build that sense of connection and community. We'll be discussing what singing can do for our brain, why more of us don't sing and why we should. And we'll also talk about Mind Medicine Australia. This is Tania's charity for educating Australians and the rest of the world to remove the stigma around psychedelics and actually understand what powerful therapeutic advantages there are when it comes to opening our minds to things like psilocybin, which actually comes from magic mushrooms, and potentially MDMA when used for therapeutic purposes. Time to open your mind, get curious, and see what you can learn from this episode today. In the episode, Tania does share her experience with psilocybin, and I also wanted to add and share with you guys my experience as well. I've also tried magic mushrooms in the Netherlands where they are legal, and it is an experience that truly changed the way that I see the world. And this is what Tania said as well. I honestly think it's something that this is not party drugs. This is not, just having an escapist experience for a moment. The way that psilocybin works, it honestly leaves you with an imprint. It leaves you with a lasting experience. And I remember very clearly having an experience of just seeing myself, and I'm describing this not as having visions or seeing, hallucinations. I was very aware of where I was, what I was doing, but I just saw myself, had a perception of myself as taking life so seriously. And I really tapped into this higher perspective of myself in that moment that could see how life isn't that serious. We're here to have fun. We're here to love and connect with others and not get bogged down in all these made up stresses and worries and illusions that we carry. And this was a profound shift, a profound experience that I carried with me and I still carry with me. I can still feel it right now as I say it to you. And that perspective was gifted to me through an experience with psilocybin or magic mushrooms. And so I honestly think if everyone in the world had an experience like that, it would change the way that our world functions, and it would certainly potentially have a huge impact on our mental health overall. But of course, this is something to look and explore, as Tania discusses, in a therapeutic context with someone who can guide you and in a place where you feel safe and supported. But I did want to share that story with you guys because I am so passionate about these new treatments and what they can potentially offer for us if we do come at them with curiosity, with an open mind, and see what else is out there, because we all know that a lot of our conventional treatment options available are possibly inadequate given the state of our mental health system, particularly in Australia, but certainly around the world as well. But let's dive into it. Let's go to the show. Tania, I'm so excited to be able to chat with you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's an honor to be with you. Really appreciate the work you're doing.
Thank you. And I appreciate the work you're doing. I'm so excited to ask you all about Mind Medicine, the fantastic work you're doing there. But to kick us off, you also have an incredible passion for music. You are an incredible singer. Can you share with us what is it that you wish more women knew, especially when it comes to music and what we have available to us?
Yeah, well, I guess I'd just say to all the women and men, if men are watching this as well, but certainly all the women, our voices have been silenced. and it's not doing us any good. So sadly, singing and even speaking in public for a lot of people is feels like a real taboo. It's like a lot of people have a real phobia of this. It's called glossophobia, speaking in public. and and so what often happens is that we feel more and more afraid of speaking out and speaking up, and this is really unhealthy because it means that we're actually repressing our creativity and our self-expression, which is a really enormous part of who we are. Our voice is the language of our hearts. And so the more that we allow ourselves to be silenced, the more we bottle things up inside of us, and then that makes us unwell. So, that can exhibit itself in both physical and mental illness, and anxiety and a whole range of other conditions. So it's really important for us to find ways to express our creativity and to express our feelings. Um, and all of us are creative beings. We were given a voice so that we would express ourselves. That's what makes us different from animals who express themselves, though, as well, through barking or singing, as birds do, to express different emotions as well. But for us as human beings, as I say in my TED talk, how singing together changes the brain, there's an incredible amount of neuroscientific benefits. And there's so much research about the neuroscientific benefits of singing, and singing particularly with others. It makes us smarter, healthier, happier, more creative. It improves our memory, language, and concentration. We start to breathe together with others, and our hearts even start to beat together when we sing together. So
Really?
yeah, it's like we sort of in train with one another, and this is really good for us as human beings. Like we're not meant to be alone. We're not meant to be isolated. We're not just meant to be, in our own little bubble.
Yeah.
And tribes who've sung and danced together throughout the ages have been strong tribes. They've been tribes, that have warded off their enemies, and they've been together in the richness and diversity of all the different unique voices that make up their community. And I'm sure that there's lots of people out there thinking, I can't sing. Well, I can tell all of you, that when I was 14, I was told by one of my best girlfriends, that I should never bother having singing lessons. And I talk about this in my TED talk. So my voice was silenced at that time, and I did backstage in the school musical, and eventually I did get the courage up to audition for the chorus of Musical Oklahoma, and I did get the lead role, which was incredible. But in different ways, we have all been silenced, often in our childhood in some way or other. At school, it could be by, teachers or other children. It could be by our parents. But we've sort of been conditioned to shut up,
Mm,
and and particularly as women, um,
yeah.
to be seen and not heard. And so I guess, I just say to everyone, we are all born creative, and we are all born with a voice. And Picasso said famously, the challenge is to remain creative throughout our lives. Yeah,
Mm. And to keep going with that, it's interesting what you say about uh, we've been silenced, and particularly in the sense of public speaking. I believe public speaking is one of the greatest fears when we measure different fears that human beings have.
yes,
When it comes to self-expression, we often think of things like, speak your truth or write in a journal, but rarely do we really talk about singing. And I can't believe someone told you, not to sing, but it is such a common thing. I was lucky enough. I have a natural singing ability. And so I've never, queried that in the same way. Like I know some people say, there's a lot of people are told just don't sing unless it sounds perfect, right? Unless it
which is
sounds really,
ridiculous. So
yeah.
ridiculous.
Can
Yeah,
we
it's
sing?
crazy.
Can we sing if we don't sound perfect?
Absolutely. I mean, look, so I do an incredible amount of work. I do a lot of keynote speeches and also team building activities for major corporations, government, academia, and other groups and conferences and special events and so on. And I will ask in my speeches, who has been told that they can't sing in the room, or have been told that they're not creative. And normally about 85% of the room put up their hand, men and women, right? And so they've been told at some stage in their life by someone that they can't sing. And so then we actually turn that on its head. I say, well, okay, let's let go of those self-limiting beliefs, because they become stuck in your head. When someone says that you can't do something, you actually start to believe that.
Yeah.
And especially if it's said to you as a child, right? So that you weren't, and you sort of, in a sense, don't know enough about yourself and enough about human nature to really question what is told to you as a child. And so I say, okay, let's put those thoughts aside, and let's actually all sing together. So it might be, 1,000 consultants at PricewaterhouseCoopers, or 80 of the senior executives at Transurban, or whatever client I'm working for. And so after my speech, I'll bring in a conductor, and we literally do some fun vocal exercises, and then we get everyone singing together in 3 or 4 part harmony. It might be an African gospel song, Freedom is Coming. Gosh, that's a timely one for now. Or, whatever it happens to be that brings everyone together. And when you bring that group of people together singing as one voice, it's not about your individual voice anymore. I always say to people, no one can hear what you sound like. It's the group dynamic, and each person in that group has a unique voice, and you can lead and you can follow and you can weave in with others, and you can create these harmonies together. And that's what creates these strong tribes, and those who sing together survive together. And this has been the case throughout history. And so what happens is these incredible groups of executives, it could be 1,000 of them all singing together, in different harmonic parts, and they blow you out of the room. And and of course they all start to realize it's not about their individual voice or being perfect. It's just participating in a group activity, letting go of those self-limiting beliefs that have been holding them back, those narratives that stay stuck in your head, and actually allowing yourself to really expand your awareness and become part of something that's bigger than yourself. It's very important.
I agree. I think we all yearn to be connected and have that sense of community. And singing's not one that people talk about very often. We don't talk about singing in groups. In fact, at school, I joined the choir. I was a choir girl, but it wasn't exactly cool to be in the choir.
Yeah, well, but nowadays, you'd be aware that 12 years ago I started Creativity Australia and the With One Voice program. It was my second charity. The first one being the Song Room, which brings music and creativity to disadvantaged students and schools around Australia. But the second one is all about social inclusion choirs that bring together people like us, doctors, lawyers, teachers, retirees, executives, with those less fortunate, migrants, job seekers, people with depression and disabilities of all faiths or backgrounds, aged 9 to 90. And in those choirs, what I think is really remarkable is that, it's not about singing perfectly. It's actually just about coming together and connecting with one another and sharing with one another. And we have this wonderful program in our With One Voice choirs called the Wish List program. And so after everyone's sung together, then the choir volunteer or conductor will read out some of the wishes that people in the choirs have. It might be help, learning English or getting a job, or someone to walk to the station with, or finding accommodation, or whatever it happens to be. And the wishes get read out, and people start granting one another's wishes, and you get haves and have-nots coming together as one. You realize that really we're far more alike than we are different. We actually are all brothers and sisters. There's never been more division in the world than there is today. But at the end of the day, we're actually part of one community, one universe. And it's really important to remind people of that, because unfortunately what leads to most mental illness in the world, and that has been well proven by many experts, is not actual, distorted or dysfunctional brain chemistry. It's actually a sense of disconnection and separation and loneliness and social isolation. And those four things really cause the majority of mental illness that we have in our community. And of course, we have a huge mental health emergency right now. We had a mental health emergency pre-COVID as well, but it's got far worse. And people are feeling very disconnected and they're feeling very isolated. And this is deeply unsettling because we are social animals. You know, we want to touch and be with, like it's so nice talking to you on this call just now because you're such an empathetic person and you have a lovely demeanor about you, and it's just nice to share time with people. Obviously it'd be much nicer to be sitting in a room together having this conversation than being on Zoom, but you know, we need connection, we need social connection. And not just social media. Social media is actually very isolating for a lot of people. It creates a false pretense of being connected where in fact you're really not connected. You're not very connected often to yourself. And Johan Hari, whose book I'm sure you would have read, and he's going to speak at our upcoming Mind Medicine Australia Summit. You know, he talks very profoundly about, in his book Lost Connections, about 7 different types of disconnection that lead to depression and anxiety and other mental illnesses. And, you know, some of those are lack of connection to yourself, lack of connection to others, lack of connection to your planet, to your work. You know, there's a whole range of different disconnections that we might experience that lead us to go down a slippery slope of mental illness and to feel not so good about ourselves and our futures.
Yeah, and honestly, when I think about how, you know, we all live in this vibrational universe at the end of the day, I cannot think of a better way to create that connection. Obviously, there is conversation and the vibration we create with our voice in that sense, but singing together is like you're literally vibrating on the same wavelength with a group of people. It's quite an ultimate connection.
It is. I mean, you know, no, I was just going to say, I mean, it truly is. Like, we have more than 30 of the With One Voice choirs around Australia, and many of them have had to go online during these lockdowns. But even still, it's a weekly way for people to connect with one another. And of course, when the choirs sing in the room together, you know, you get goosebumps. Like, I can be having the most grumpy day and I'll go to one of our With One Voice choirs, and within 5 minutes, I'm seeing people who are severely handicapped, who are unemployed, who are, you know, disabled in different ways, as well as more fortunate people. But I see everyone coming together as one. There's no division between the haves and have-nots. We realise that we are one together, and we create this beautiful sound together. And you literally start to tingle with this energy, and it expands your awareness, it raises your consciousness, and it's like a weekly therapy session. It's so good for you. And you know, the neural connectivity, because you're actually unlocking the right temporal lobe of your brain through singing with others, and that of course releases a whole lot of important neurotransmitters like oxytocin, which is really important for bonding and connecting with others and so on.
Wow. And we get that when we have a big hug with someone, but you know, especially I suppose at a time like this, it's a great thing to be able to do when we can't necessarily hug everyone. For someone who is, you know, curious about this and thinking, wow, you know, I've always wanted to sing, but when I was 10 or 11 years old, everyone told me to shut up and my voice sounded terrible, like a, you know, bag of screaming cats or something. What are some ways that we can start getting curious about this and dipping our toe in the water?
Yeah, I mean, look, really, I just encourage everyone to sing. It is really very good for you on your own and particularly together with others.
Yeah.
But, you know, sing in the shower, sing in the car, sing with others, sing with your family, sing along to your favourite songs. You know, put on some karaoke tracks on your computer and sing along to them. That's a great way. And of course, join our With One Voice choirs. I mean, you know, they're incredible, and we really have the most welcoming groups of choirs around Australia in all different cities and regional areas and so on. And we have wonderful conductors that lead those choirs. And just start, you know, using your voice. And
Yeah.
as well, I think, you know, don't be afraid to speak out about what matters to you, whether it's with a group of people or just with your family or your, you know, other loved ones, your group of friends. You know,
Yeah.
don't be silenced, because it's a really critical time in the world right now where it's really important that we hear from more people, and their views and their knowledge and their information, because we're in a world that is at the moment appearing to be more and more censored, where
Yeah.
there's more silencing than I can ever recall in my entire life going on. And in that sort of environment, it's even more important for people to speak out and not be silenced. That we hear different viewpoints. Every voice matters, not
Yeah.
just some voices, not just some opinions.
You know, and as we speak about this, I just am reflecting with gratitude on how in my family, we have always been singers, like maybe except my brother, although he occasionally will join in too. My grandmother was a performer and a singer, and we always sang in harmony. And it's something that I don't know, I just have always seen as something my family does, and we're loud and we're, you know, so I honestly think it's such a powerful thing. I'm curious, when you were told, you know, don't bother with singing lessons, how did you sort of get past that, Tanya? Was there someone that did believe in you, or was there something you knew within yourself?
Um, you know, I just liked singing so much. You know, like I'd always sing the hymns loudly in the school assembly and stuff. You know, I'm Jewish, you know, and I was singing these hymns at the top of my voice. And
Mm.
I guess I did backstage in the school musical, then I auditioned for the chorus, and I just, I think I just knew that this was something that I had and wanted to do. And it really did teach me what happened in the end, not to let people snatch my dreams away, you know. And I think this is really important for every one of us. You know, if you want to write, if you want to dance, if you want to cook, if you want to sing, whatever it happens to be, well, don't let anyone rain on your parade. You only get one chance to live, you know, this particular lifetime. So if you want to do something, then just do it, and don't let anyone shut you down.
Yeah.
Um, because otherwise, you know, what's the point?
Yeah.
What is the purpose of being here if we can't express ourselves in the way we want to express ourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. That's very inspiring to have that self belief and to just go and do it anyway. Now, I want to just switch gears slightly and start to talk about Mind Medicine Australia. Can you share, Tanya, the story behind creating this wonderful organization?
Sure, yeah. So, you know, look, I've always been the kind of person that is very interested in sort of hacking myself. Whether it's, you know, my mind or my body or my spirit, I'm interested in trying different things. So, you know, I've done mantra and tantra and, you know, psychotherapy and cryotherapy and myotherapy, you name it. I tried just about every type of thing that you can think of along the way, different diets, everything. But I've never ever taken any drugs. So, you know, I don't drink alcohol. I've never really got drunk. I don't smoke. I don't even drink coffee. And I've always been, I guess, I think I was pretty against drugs. And I didn't really understand what drugs were or what they did. And then about 5.5 years ago, I get a blog by Tim Ferriss, and you know, a regular Friday blog he sends out. And this particular Friday, he had a blog that talked about how we didn't donated $100,000 to Imperial College, who were doing research using psilocybin assisted therapy to treat depression. Well, I don't suffer from clinical depression or anything like that, but I was really interested in what this was. I had no idea what psilocybin even was. Well, psilocybin is the psychoactive component of magic mushrooms. But when I clicked on the link, and it was an article in the New Yorker magazine, which was talking about a trial that was going on at New York University for patients with end-of-life stress and anxiety through terminal cancer diagnosis. And I read this article, and I was just like, it was just a light bulb went off. And so I just thought, this is really incredible. And it was talking about a man who had this terminal diagnosis, who was in the trial at New York Uni, and he had some intergenerational trauma caused through the Holocaust. And because I'm also the daughter and granddaughter of Holocaust survivors, this really rang a bell with me, because I had become aware that I could never really watch anything about the Holocaust or really come to terms with what had happened to the majority of relatives on both sides of my family who'd been killed during the Holocaust. And so I could never watch anything about the Holocaust on telly. I'd have to leave the room and stuff like that. So I knew that this was some kind of trauma that I was carrying, even though I wasn't personally there, that it had come through my DNA, you know, through my parents. And this was something I had to do some work on. And I'd done certain, you know, therapies and all different things to try and, I guess, manage some of these challenges, you know, maybe some anxiety that I was feeling or carrying with me. And so I just immediately just said to my husband, look, you know, have a read of this article. I really think we should do this treatment. My husband's father had committed suicide when he was 13. So, you know, we all carry trauma. We all have trauma. If it's not our own, it's our parents' or it's our grandparents' trauma. And it does come through epigenetically to us.
Yeah.
And so what happened was he read the article and then he said, oh, it sounds really interesting, you know, and he didn't really think any more of it, but he said, you know, if you want to organise it, go ahead. So I tried to get us into the trials at Imperial College or some of the other trials that were going on in Europe at the time. And because we don't have a mental health diagnosis, we couldn't get into any of the trials, and there weren't any trials going on for healthy patients, so-called. And so we ended up being introduced to a guide in the Netherlands. And of course, these treatments are legal in the Netherlands. And so we flew, you know, overseas, and we had this massive dose of psilocybin, preceded by Syrian rue, which sort of helps to amplify the experience and helps the psilocybin bypass your gut where it might be broken down. And we literally were blasted into multiple different dimensions of the multiverse.
Yeah.
You know, we went astral planes and rivers, and you know, and we confronted different parts of our psyches and traumas and different people and spirits and you name it. And you know, the sense of connection and oneness was so profound. I mean, it was extraordinary. Like, it was without a doubt the best experience for me anyway. And Peter, I guess, you know, we both just said this is the best thing that's ever happened in our whole lives. You know, like neither of us had any drugs whatsoever in our lives. And it was so profound that we started to do an incredible amount of investigation on, you know, what these substances really were, and started meeting with the researchers from around the world and learning more about them, reading everything we could, watching everything we could. The expanded consciousness that we're experiencing was also really profound. You know, I experienced even more creativity. I experienced increased neuroplasticity. I've certainly never seen anything in nature the same way again. No leaf, no flower, no seashell, no raindrop looks the same to me as it did since that day, you know. I mean, since that day, everything has changed. And so we started really, really learning about the field. And it was, you know, and this field has been going through this renaissance for the last 10 to 15 years, and is now, you know, again, considered to be the most important potential breakthrough for the treatment of a range of mental illnesses, including, you know, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, addictions, dementia, Alzheimer's, eating disorders like anorexia, obsessive compulsive disorder, even cluster headaches, fibromyalgia. They're looking at it for strokes and Parkinson's. It's like extraordinary. And of course, back in the 50s and 60s, psychedelic-assisted therapies were considered the next big thing in psychiatric medicine. And over 50,000 patients went through, psychedelic-assisted therapy treatments in medically controlled environments with therapists during that period and got well from a variety of conditions. They were also used very successfully. MDMA-assisted therapy was used for not only treatment of PTSD, but for relationship counselling. But then in 1971, Nixon had his war on drugs, which was entirely political, had nothing to do with the science. And many people describe that as the worst censorship of science and medicine in the history of humanity.
Wow.
Effectively, that stopped all research and further treatments with these medicines until the last 10 to 15 years. And if you think about that period between 1970 to now, we've seen this massive spike in mental illness. We've seen a massive spike in loneliness, disconnection, social isolation. So one can only wonder what the world might look like today had these treatments have remained available and continued, to be researched as well. And so here we are now, and we're now seeing this massive mental health crisis. 1 in 5 people pre-COVID with a mental illness, but it's suggested now that 1 in 3 of us are suffering with a mental illness. And 1 in 8 people pre-COVID on antidepressants, including 1 in 4 older adults and 1 in 30 children as young as 4. But these numbers have exacerbated really enormously during this pandemic. And there really are no treatments at the moment that are working to get the majority of patients well. Like in the case of antidepressants, only 30 to 35% of patients go into remission. And in the case of post-traumatic stress disorder, only about 5% of patients go into remission from existing treatments. So that means the majority of patients are actually not getting well. They're either still on their psychiatrist or psychologist books, which means that those therapists can't take on any new patients, which is why the wait lists are so long, or they drop out of the system altogether, which could lead to a terrible slippery slope, which can lead to suicide or, terrible situation where people get very, very ill. Or they go and try and find these sorts of treatments underground, which can be risky. I mean, there are some wonderful underground practitioners, but our goal really and our focus is on making these treatments clinically available. And the remarkable thing is that in 160 current and recent trials, the remission rates have been between 60 to 80%.
Wow.
You're seeing the majority of patients getting well versus the majority of patients not getting well. And so we're working really hard to make sure that these treatments become available and accessible to all Australians through the medical system. And Mind Medicine Australia is really dedicated to building the ecosystem, to making these treatments available through 4 strategic pillars. We focus on education and awareness. So, having webinars and podcasts like with you today. But we also partner with a lot of hospitals, clinics, unis, health insurers and other businesses to inform their stakeholders and other medical professionals and politicians and others about these treatments, so that people let go of the stigma and prejudice that has been connected to these medicines since the war on drugs. It's so unfair.
It sounds like there's a lot of trust to be repaired there.
Yeah.
Are psychedelics like psilocybin and MDMA special, or does it make you reconsider the potential benefits of other drugs too in this instance?
Look, they're particularly, obviously there's a lot of success in treating a range of conditions with medicinal cannabis as well. And we're seeing that, really emerging, across the community. But psilocybin and MDMA are even more effective. Psilocybin and MDMA have the potential to treat and cure with just a few short treatments. 2 to 3 treatments usually is leading to these remissions, alongside a short course of psychotherapy. Now, if you compare that against a lifetime of, either psychotherapy or pharmacotherapy with antidepressants, or indeed even with medicinal cannabis, I take medicinal cannabis for insomnia. It's prescribed by my doctor, but if I stop taking it, then, I'm probably not going to be able to sleep. So to find treatments that have only a short course requirement to get well, That is really significant. And that's why psilocybin and MDMA assisted therapies have both been given breakthrough therapy status by the FDA, the Food and
Mm.
Drug Administration in the US, to fast track their approval as prescribed medicines because they're considered potentially vastly superior to existing treatments that are available.
I find this so exciting for the potential there, especially as you say, you don't need to keep taking it every day or, for years and years. You can potentially, is it partly, Tanya, because there's such a profound experience, having one session, for example, one dose, that experience, as you said, you don't see the world the same way afterwards. Is it
Yeah.
there's a lasting effect on our brain? What's going on there?
So what actually happens is, the medicine is bypassing what's called the default mode network of our brain, which keeps us defaulting stuck in our rigid patterns and programs. And particularly if we're suffering from depression or anxiety or whatever, it's, I might not good enough, things that aren't going to work out for me. There's a wonderful animated video you might like to link to on this, which I've sent to you, Georgie, which you might like to include with the notes for the podcast. It explains a lot of this. But so, we stay often stuck in our rigid thought patterns and programs. And what psilocybin in particular does is it helps to really reconnect a whole lot of the neural pathways that have stopped talking to one another and creates this massive neurogenesis and this increased neuroplasticity, which enables a very skilled therapist to help the patient with that window of opportunity to break out of their normal stuck thought patterns and start to create new thought patterns, and move forwards instead of just continually going back to the same sort of repeating, ruminating phrases. So that's really profound, and that's why we've started a certificate in psychedelic-assisted therapies to train psychiatrists, psychologists, GPs, and a whole range of other, counsellors, nurses, psychotherapists, social workers, and other allied health practitioners and GPs and physicians in these therapies so that they can work with patients in altered states and help them to get well. So we're, by the end of next year, we'll have trained hundreds of therapists around Australia. We've already had 2 intakes go through. We've got a lot of other professional development programs as well, because it's really important to say that psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy means the psychedelic plus the psychotherapy. It's not one or the other. So just going out and trying these medicines without proper psychotherapy, if you've got a mental health condition, it's probably not going to work that well for you. And it's generally not a great idea to do these particular medicines without some kind of psychotherapeutic support. We have a psychological support service that provides support to people wanting to work with these medicines and integration support if they've used the medicines. So that's perfectly legal because that's a harm reduction service we provide. But the actual taking of the medicines, that's not legal in Australia yet, which is why we're working so hard to try and make sure that these medicines are available through the medical system and are rescheduled. We're also working with the TGA, the Therapeutic Goods Administration, on the rescheduling of these medicines, so that they become controlled medicines, and not that patients can take them home, but that they can work with therapists in clinical environments to get well.
It certainly sounds like such a promising area and something that could potentially take the load off our mental health system too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the potential to take the load is huge. And,
Yeah.
there's just so much suffering and so many suicides that are avoidable in our community. And we need to do everything we can as a community to really now expand the treatment options that are available to doctors and their patients, because the current treatments are not working for the majority of people.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Tanya, thank you so much for sharing that and really wishing you all the best with Mind Medicine. Where can we find you and, learn more about the things we've spoken about today?
Sure. So, firstly, I just want to encourage everyone to look us up on mindmedicineaustralia.org. We're a registered charity, so we'd love you to sign up to donate, to support us and spread the word. You can join one of our chapters. We have more than 30 chapters around Australia, or start one up. We also have a major summit, a global summit in November that's online with some of the leading researchers and doctors and scientists from around the world speaking at it. Like people like Gabor Mate, Dr. Johan Hari, David Nutt, really the leading lights in the world presenting at that. And as well, we have lots of events. We have lots of free webinars. We have free global webinar series. We've got Hamilton Morris speaking about sex and psychedelics. He's really, a very well-known guy, and a whole lot of other extraordinary people as well that we're speaking with. So I'm really just hoping that we can work with everyone who's listening to this to help educate you further on this field, to build awareness, and to remove the stigma and prejudice that has surrounded this field for such a long time by focusing on the data and the science, just like I have today. And we'd be more than happy to share as much information as we can with all of your community, Georgie.
Wonderful. Well, I'll have all those links in the show notes so people can find you nice and easily, Tania, and support Mind Medicine and go and learn. Because I agree, it's being able to watch a video on exactly what psilocybin's doing, or, look at the research yourself. It's one of those things that will speak for itself. And so I encourage everyone to go check it out. Thank you so much, Tania. It's been beautiful to chat with you.
Thank you, Georgie. You're doing beautiful work. And yeah, and we'll share my album, a little bit of my album with everyone as well. Well,
yes,
some of my albums anyway.
Absolutely. We will lead into that now. Thanks so much, Tania. Have a beautiful night.
Thank you, Georgie.
If you're ready to get to the root cause of your anxiety and leave no stone unturned, covering every facet of the anxiety reset method, from the thoughts you think to the health of your gut, your nutritional status, your hormones, and your lifestyle, then jump on the waitlist for the 90-day Anxiety Reset Program. This is the tried and tested path to help you find your true self, feel more balanced, and really become the master of your anxious mind. You'll be first to hear about the exciting upgrades when the program is next available. And you'll also hear exclusive benefits around the membership program that will be offered very soon. And if you want me all to yourself and have the VIP treatment, then join the waitlist to become a private client in the Balance program. Through our intensive 3-month program, we work closely together, tailoring a plan specific to every individual need you have. Completing your application for Balance, you'll be the first to hear when my next client space opens. And no matter which option you decide is best for you, I'll give you all the tools you need to ensure you become an anxiety master. Thank you for listening. We have reached the end of this episode. If you enjoy this podcast and you find it helpful, I would really appreciate it if you would hit subscribe or share this episode on your Instagram stories, and make sure you tag @Georgie the Naturopath. But that is all for today. Please be kind to yourselves. Know that you are enough and you are exactly where you need to be.